everyone, myself Archana Patel from grade 9D of Action Public School, here to show you small video on the chapter tissues. A small topic I have taken, that is animal tissues.
Start.
So yes, now there is a question comes in your mind, that is what is animal tissue? Animal cells are usually grouped together to form animal tissues, and there are four types basically in that. That is epithelial tissue, muscular tissue, connective tissue, and nervous tissue. So now let me begin with the first tissue, that is epithelial tissue. This is in the many forms and can be subdivided or divided into many ways. That is, the cells are divided into cell shape, that is columnar, squamous, cuboidal, and granular. Now I am going to tell you the characteristics of epithelial tissue. That is these can be single layer or the multi-layer. You know about single layer and the multi-layer, and sometimes there will be multicellular and unicellular also. And these tissue have power to recreate. It means they have power to control them. Then the plasma membrane of these cells is specialized into flagella, cilia, or microglia. You know about flagella, and then I am going to tell you about the cuboidal tissue. That is one type of epithelial tissue. That is, these forms in the lining of kidney, tubules, and the ducts of salivary glands, and they provide usually mechanical support to the animal. And granular epithelial tissue. It folds inwards and forms multicellular gland which secretes substance, which collects the substance and which helps in the making of granular epithelial tissue. Now, columnar tissue. It consists of tall pillars like cells. It is present in the walls of intestine. It is present in the walls of intestine present in our stomach. Then there is squamous epithelial tissue. It contains two types, that is simple squamous and complex squamous. That is, these contains of thin flat cells, and it is present in the lining of blood vessels, lungs, esophagus, etc. So let me move forward with telling you about the connective tissue. That is, it helps in connecting the various tissues of a body together, and it mainly helps in supporting, insulating, and you can see binding, supporting, and storage, reserve fuel. And it is mainly helped in bending of the tissue. It can be called as the backbone. And you can see here, connective tissue is classified into loose connective tissue and dense connective tissues, in which areolar, adipose, and reticular tissues are classified. Again, you can see the classification that regular. You can see that dense connective tissue is separated into regular, irregular, and it is elastic. As you know, it is elastic because it helps the binding. And you can see again there is a separation, that is fluid connective tissue. It helps in the blood. It again have the two separation, that is blood and lymph. And again you can see, I said you before that this connective tissue helps in supporting for the tissue. And again it has two different divisions, which is cartilage and bones. In cartilage you can see it is again elastic and fibrous, and in bone you can see it is spongy and it is again elastic because it is mainly concentrated on bending. Now you can see this is the last type of the tissue, that is nervous tissue. This develops from the ectoderm of the embryo, and its structure is composed of neurons. Neurons, these are structural and functional unit of the system of the body, and you can see the neuron parts, that is axon, cell body, dendrites, and cell body, so on. Now you can see this nervous tissue functions stimulate muscles in contraction and creates an awareness of the environment and plays a major role in emotions of our body. Usually, nerves play an important role in our brain. And you can see these are also called as neurons. I think you have enjoyed this video.
Good afternoon everyone. Myself Laxhmi from grade 9D here to make a video on animal tissues. The learning objectives or the topics that we are going to learn in this video are definition of tissue, different kinds of tissue and different types of animal tissues. Now let us see what is the definition of tissue. A tissue is a group of cells that have similar structure and perform particular function is known as tissue. There are two types of tissues. They are animal tissue and plant tissue. In this video, we will be mainly focused on animal tissue. Let us see what are different types of animal tissue. There are 4 types of animal tissue. They are epithelial tissue, nervous tissue, muscular tissue and connective tissue. Now let us learn about epithelial tissue. Epithelial tissue is seen on the outer layer of animal body and it forms the protective layer on the animal body. And further, epithelial tissue is divided into 4 main parts or 4 main types. They are squamous epithelial tissue, cuboidal epithelial tissue, ciliated epithelial tissue and stratified epithelial tissue. Squamous epithelial tissue, it is extremely flat and thin layer of tissue. It is also semi-permeable and it is present in the lining of esophagus and mouth. Next comes the cuboidal epithelial tissue. As the name suggests, cuboidal, it is cube in shape and it is present in the lining of salivary gland and it provides mechanical support. Stratified epithelial tissue. Epithelial cells are arranged in many layers to prevent wear and tear in skin. Ciliated epithelial tissue. On the free surface, there are protoplasmic outgrowth called cilia present. It helps in the movement of ova in fallopian tube. Let us learn the second type of animal tissue, that is nervous tissue. Its composition is that it is made up of neurons that receives and conduct impulses. This is the structure of neuron. This is nucleus, which is main part of the neuron. As we know that nucleus is the brain of cell. In a similar way, nucleus is also brain of neuron. This is dendrite, which is the endings of neuron. It receives impulses. This is axon and this is nerve ending which transmits impulses to another neuron and its function is that it transmits stimulus very rapidly. The fourth type of animal tissue is connective tissue. It is further divided into 3 main types, that is connective tissue, supporting connective tissue, fluid connecting tissue. The connecting tissue is further divided into loose and dense. In loose, the areolar and adipose, and to dense, it is regular, irregular or elastic. Supporting connective tissue is cartilage and bone. Fluid connective tissue is blood and lymph. The first kind of fluid connective tissue is blood. It has 3 main components, that is RBC, WBC and platelet. RBC is also known as red blood cell. It contains hemoglobin which helps in the transportation of oxygen to the blood. And now comes the WBC, which is also known as white blood cells. It acts like a soldier to the body to fight against bacteria. Now comes the platelet, which helps to clot the blood when we are injured. The first supporting connecting tissue is bone. It forms framework of the body and gives strength and shape to the body. Another type of connective tissue is areolar tissue. It is found between muscles and skin and around blood vessels and it supports the internal organelles. Adipose tissue stores fat and acts as an insulator. Thank you everyone for spending your precious time in watching this video and have a wonderful day.
Good morning everyone. My name is Krupa. I am studying at Akshada Public School, grade 9th. Today my topic is animal tissues. There are 4 types of animal tissues. Those are epithelial, muscular, connective and nervous. First, let's study about epithelial tissue. Epithelial tissue is the protective tissue in animal body. These have extracellular fibrous basement membrane. Depending upon their shape and function, epithelial tissues are classified as squamous, cuboidal, columnar, ciliated, and granular. Squamous. What do you mean by squama? Means the skin of the skin. Simple squamous epithelial cells are extremely thin and flat. This can be seen in the esophagus and the lining of the mouth. Striated squamous. Striated squamous are arranged in the pattern of layers. These are arranged in many layers to prevent wear and tear. Skin is an example of striated squamous. Columnar epithelial tissues. They are made up of pillar-like cells. These are made up of single layer of long epithelial cells. It helps in absorption and secretion. It is present in inner lining of intestine. Columnar epithelial tissues contains hair-like projections are known as ciliated columnar epithelium. Ciliated columnar can be seen in the respiratory tract. Cuboidal epithelial tissues. Cuboidal epithelial tissues contains cube-shaped cells. These can be seen in the lining of kidney tubules and salivary ducts. It provides mechanical support. It contains gland cells for secretion of substance on the surface. Granular tissue is formed when the cuboidal tissue folds upward. Connective tissues connects different parts of the body and joins it together. The cells of the connective tissues are loosely packed and have space between them are filled with the fluid matrix. Now, fluid connective tissues is blood and skeletal connective tissue are bone and cartilage. Proper connective tissue are areolar, ligament, tendon and adipose. Blood. Blood has a fluid matrix called plasma. Plasma contains RBCs, WBCs and platelets. It also contains proteins, salts and hormones. RBCs are known as erythrocytes and WBCs are known as leukocytes. Platelets are known as thrombocytes. RBCs are red blood cells which contains hemoglobin, the pigment which makes the blood red. RBCs also transport oxygen. White blood cells are known as leukocytes which fight against the bacteria present in our body. Platelets help in the coagulation of the blood. Bone. Bone form the framework which supports the body. Bones are strong and non-flexible. Bone cells are embedded in the hard matrix that is composed of calcium and phosphorus compounds. Ligament. Ligament connects two bones and it contains very little matrix. Tissue is very elastic and considerable strength. Tendons connect muscle to bones. These are fibrous tissue with great strength but limited flexibility. Moving on, cartilage. Cartilage smoothens bones surface at joints. It is present in the ear, nose, trachea and larynx. It contains solid matrix which is composed of protein and sugar. Now moving forward to areolar. Areolar tissue is found between the skin and muscles. It fills the space inside the organs. It supports the internal organs and helps in the repair of tissues. Adipose tissue. It is found below the skin and between internal organelles. Cells of this tissue are filled with fat. Third type of connective tissue is muscular tissue. There are three types of muscular tissue. Those are smooth muscle, striated muscle, cardiac muscle. First, smooth muscle are the involuntary muscle, uninucleated and unstriated. Involuntary means it is not the movement of this muscle is not under our control. It is present in the iris of eyes, uterus and in bronchi of lungs. The cells are long and have pointed ends. Next, striated muscle. The cells of this muscle are long, cylindrical, unbranched, voluntary and multinucleated. Voluntary means it is the movement of this muscle is under our control. These are known as skeletal muscles too. It is found in the arms and legs. They have striations. Now, cardiac muscle. Cardiac muscles are known as involuntary muscles. Cells are cylindrical, branched, and uninucleated. First one striated muscle and second one is smooth muscle and third one is cardiac muscle. Cardiac muscle is found in our heart which is working throughout the life. In the second image it is the smooth muscle as they have spindle like ends. In the first image that is striated muscle have striations. Here we can see the striations. Now next type is nervous tissue. Nervous tissue. The nerve cell has cell body containing nucleus and cytoplasm. It has hair-like structure called dendrites, a long part called axon having nerve ends. Dendrites receive impulses whereas the axon transmit impulses away from the cell body. Here ends the animal tissue. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Myself Shambhavi from grade 9 studying in Akshara Public School, here to explain the lesson tissue. First, we will discuss what is a tissue. A tissue is a group of cells similar in structures and functions. These tissues are classified into two types. They are plant tissue and animal tissue. Here we will discuss mainly about animal tissues. Animal tissues are of four main types. They are epithelial tissue, muscular tissue, connective tissue and nervous tissue. Epithelial tissue. Epithelial tissue is covering or protective tissue in animals, and these forms outer covering like skin, outer covering of organs, inner lining of blood vessels, lungs, esophagus, etc. And these protect the body and controls the movement of material between the body and parts of body. And the tissues of epithelial have cells which are closely arranged and have fibrous basement membrane, and these epithelial tissue are of four main types. They are squamous epithelial tissue, columnar epithelial tissue, cuboidal epithelial tissue and granular epithelial tissue. First, we will discuss about squamous epithelial tissue. Squamous epithelial tissue consists of layer of thin flat cells which are present in lining of blood vessels, lungs, mouth, esophagus, etc. And the cells have several layers of epithelial tissue, and these tissues are known as stratified squamous epithelial tissue. Columnar epithelial tissue. Columnar epithelial tissue consists of tall pillar-like cells which are present in wall of intestine, and the columnar epithelial tissue in respiratory tract has hair-like projections called ciliated, and these tissues are known as ciliated columnar epithelial tissue. Cuboidal epithelial tissue. Cuboidal epithelial tissue consists of cone-shaped cells having a basement membrane, and it forms lining of kidney, tubules, ducts of salivary glands and provide mechanical support. Granular epithelial tissue. Granular epithelial tissue sometimes fold inward and form multicellular gland which secretes substances. Next, we will discuss about muscular tissue. Muscular tissue consists of elongated cells also called as muscle fibers, and these tissues are responsible for movement of our body, and muscles contain the special proteins which helps in contract and relax of our muscles, and these muscles present in our limbs. When we want them to move we can, or stop when we don't want, and these muscles are known as voluntary muscles. And these muscular tissues are of different types. They are striated, unstriated and cardiac. Striated muscular tissue. Striated muscular tissues are voluntary muscles having light and dark striations, and these cells are long, cylindrical and are multinucleated, and these are also known as skeletal muscles because they are attached to the bone. Unstriated muscles. Unstriated muscles are involuntary muscles having no striations, and these cells are long and have spindle shape and are unnucleated, and they are present in alimentary canal, blood vessel, bronchi of lungs, iris of eye and uterus, etc. Cardiac muscles. These are voluntary muscles having faint striations, and the cells are long, cylindrical, branched and uninucleated, and they are present in heart, which helps in concentration and relaxation of heart. Next, connective tissue. Connective tissue is fundamental type of animal tissue which possesses scattered living cells embedded in a matrix, and these cells helps to connect, bind, support and pack different structures of animal body, and they are specialized to connect various parts of body. The cells of connective tissue are living and loosely packed, and the main bulk of connective tissue is homogeneous get like intercellular substances called matrix, and they are of different types. They are blood, bone, ligaments, tendons, cartilage, areolar, adipose. Blood is an example of fluid connective that links different parts of body and helps in transport of oxygen and nutrients, and it contains matrix called plasma, and blood cells are floating in plasma. And there are three types of blood cells. They are red blood cells, white blood cells and plasma. Functions of blood cells: red blood cells and white blood cells. Red blood cells, which are RBCs, are also called as erythrocytes, and they are circular and non-nucleated. RBCs contain a pigment called hemoglobin, which helps in transport of oxygen to various parts of body. White blood cells. White blood cells are also known as WBCs, which helps in fighting infection by producing antibodies. WBCs are of two types, granulocytes and agranulocytes. Areolar tissue. This tissue is located between skin and muscles, around blood vessels and nerves in bone marrow, and these are loose and circular tissue, and it consists of two kinds of fibers. They are white kaolin fiber and yellow elastic fiber. Tendon and ligament. Tendon connects skeletal muscles to bone. They are tough and elastic, and these connects to end of muscles to bone, and each muscles contains only one tendon. These are in white colors and they are not classified into any types. Ligaments connects bone to bones and connects the end of the bone at joints, and each joint contains many ligaments. They are yellow in color and they are classified into three types. They are articular ligaments, remnant ligaments and peritoneal ligaments. Adipocyte tissue. Fat storing adipose tissues is found below the skin and between the internal organs. The skin of this tissue are filled with fat globules, and the storage of fats also lets it act as an insulator. Next, nervous tissue. Nervous tissues are all cells possess the ability to respond to stimuli, and these cells of nervous tissues are highly specialized for being stimulated and then transmitting the stimulus very rapidly from one place to another within the body. And the brain, spinal cord and nerves are composed of nervous tissues, and the cells of these tissues are nerve cells or neurons. Neurons consist of cell bodies with a nucleus and cytoplasm, from which long thin hair-like parts arises. Usually each neuron has a single long part called as axon, many short branches parts called as dendrites. The signal that passes along the nerve fiber is called as nerve impulse. Nerve impulse help us to move our muscles when we want to. Thank you.